4,236 nautical miles. 32 days, 3.5 hours. Yeah, I'm talking about our recent Pacific passage on Calypso. Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today I'm sharing highlights from our recent Pacific passage from Panama to French Polynesia. First, though, I got to do a little bit of a plug for the Boat Galley's cruising guides. No, there aren't cruising guides for French Polynesia. I don't know, maybe I should put one together. But did you know that the Boat Galley has cruising guides? These aren't your run-of-the-mill guides just filled with all kinds of ads and sponsored things and restaurants and the best place to stop for whatever. Actually, these are, as you would expect from the team here at the Boat Galley, chock full of the information that you need right at your fingertips when you go someplace new. Need propane fill? Need to know where you can walk the dog? What the best anchorage is for the given wind conditions? All of that right at your fingertips in the Boat Galley's quick reference guides. If you're headed to the Bahamas, the Florida Keys, the Chesapeake Bay, get your hands on one of these quick reference guides today. You will not be sorry. So I'm recording this sitting at anchor in Tawata, which is an island in French Polynesia just south of Hivaoa, in a white sand beach anchorage called Hanamoenoa. There are a handful of other boats around, and there's quite a swell rolling through. It's slight, though, not compared to anything like what we dealt with on our passage, or even, honestly, at the Playita anchorage in Panama before we left. We spent just over 32 days at sea. 8 out of the last 12 hours were spent hove to in the lee of a little island just south of Hivaoa, because we needed to wait for daylight to go into the anchorage at Atuana. Oh, and somebody wanted to know why I'm not saying that we crossed the Pacific. Well, I say Pacific Passage and not Pacific Crossing because we're only about a third of the way across. This is a huge body of water. And our jaunts going forward will probably feel like stepping stones in comparison to what we've done. But the fact does remain, between here and our ultimate goal of New Zealand, and that's not for a number of years, there's a lot more ocean to cross before we get there. Luckily, we have lots and lots of time. I did daily emails while we were on passage, and there's actually a link in the show notes to a Google Doc where I have all of those if you wanted to look through them. Those are filled with minutia, observations of the moon, the stars, the effects of that roll that I mentioned. And those daily emails include some highlights, but this podcast is just focusing on those highlights. There was crossing the equator on day 7. And I don't know why crossing a largely imaginary line feels so momentous, but it definitely does. And talking to everybody about their equator crossing, they feel the same way. We paralleled the 0-degree line for much of the night, wanting to cross when we were both awake. So some rum for breakfast with a tot for Neptune, there we went. On day 9, we had this epic dolphin visit. In what would actually turn out to be the last dolphin visit of the whole passage, right around sunset, we were treated to this huge, never-ending pod of commuting dolphins. They were commuting. They were definitely on their way from somewhere to somewhere else, and they didn't do a whole lot of playing in the bow, which is unusual for dolphins. They traversed from northeast to southwest in groups, sometimes 5, sometimes 10. They just kept coming. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, right at sunset. It was unreal. On day 10, we had a Flappy Bird, that's what we called him, Flappy Bird, landing on the boat. I don't know if this was necessarily a highlight, but it certainly was something different. And my friend Gina helped us figure out that this was probably a swallow-tailed gull, which is actually a pelagic species that breeds in the Galapagos and on one other little island out there. So kind of cool that you can't really see this kind of bird anywhere else other than where we happen to be. So yeah, I guess in that way, it definitely was a highlight. Full moon rising on day 14. Observing the phases of the moon so closely on my night watches was a total treat. I hadn't quite internalized the fact that the full moon rises as the sun sets. So we're watching the sun go down off of our bow and the full moon rising off of our transom almost simultaneously. And as the moon wanes fully, that shifts to the point where it winds up setting right along with the sun. Fish on. On day 15, we caught a good-sized mahi-mahi, so our dinner choices were set for the next few days. We don't have a freezer, so we were eating all that fish until it was gone. And this wound up actually being the very last time we even deployed a fishing line because the seas grew steadily more challenging from that point out. Actually, I think we had 4 days of dinner on that mahi, and then I asked Jeremy not to put the fishing line out because we wanted to have something other than fish for at least a meal or two. And then the seas just made it really tough to be doing any kind of fishing and processing of fish. We had one major piece of gear failure when the main halyard chafed through, and it sent the mainsail cascading into the lazy jacks unexpectedly, luckily, during the middle of the day. And on day 17, Jeremy fixed that halyard on an initial temporary fix. We had very initially just used the topping lift to carry the main back up, and on day 17, Jeremy used the lighter line, that lighter topping lift line, as a messenger line to pull the main halyard, which is a thicker line, back into duty. And we spent the rest of the passage definitely keeping a very close eye on the halyards, and we've determined there's some kind of a chafe point at the shivs, and that is on the fix list. By day 21, we were finally having some nice sunsets. We didn't have very many great sunsets on the whole passage, but we did have a few sailing straight into the sunset, as cliche as that might be, with some beautiful skies to show for it. We did not see any green flashes on the whole passage. Milestones. Milestones were incredible as highlights. We did the first 1,000 miles. We did the Equator crossing. We did the halfway point. Less than 1,000 miles to go on day 24. Going from 4 digits left to 3 digits was a pretty big deal. It's kind of fun to watch those sorts of things happen on the chart plotter. Honestly, sitting in the cockpit, watching Larry steer, Larry, our self-steering unit that Jeremy built, watching him steer never, ever, ever got old. I got a picture of it on day 21 with the sun glinting on the swell behind us, but I could sit for hours in the cockpit, at least until my butt went numb because it was wet enough out there that we didn't put the chairs up. So we were sitting on bare fiberglass, but the sun glinting on the swells and the swoosh as we went down the face of the waves, just watching that wonderful piece of gear just do its job. Absolute magic. My watch was generally from midnight to sunup, and the stars when we had clear skies and the moon was not full, the stars were unbelievable. And we had at least one calm enough night that I was able to get some shots with the camera, which is just an iPhone. On day 30, pancake breakfast at 30 knots. Yeah, we tended to do Sunday breakfast as a tradition. Pancakes, ham, or Canadian bacon with maple syrup. And on day 30, even in the middle of squalls and 30 knots of sustained wind, handed up pancakes to Jeremy, and he had his pancakes in between squall lines. And I think one of the things that we learned is that we have new levels of acceptable conditions, and it's been kind of a cool thing to learn on this whole passage. Land ho. Day 32, we didn't really close it enough with the rain clouds and what was happening. We didn't actually see land before the sun went down on day 32. But it was there. And making landfall on day 33, successfully completing this passage with pretty minimal gear failure, listening to what other people talk about. They talk about ripping sails and breaking whisker poles and all the rest of it. We feel like we got off pretty easy with a broken halyard that we were able to get back working again. But minimal gear failure, generally in good spirits. I did have tears in my eyes as we closed on Hiva Oa. We've been talking about doing this for such a very, very, very long time. The boat did great. We averaged 5.5 knots over the whole passage, 5.5 knots over the whole passage on a 28-foot boat. Our time of just over 32 days was actually better than a lot of other people that we've talked to, all of whom are on bigger boats. We were generally comfortable. We ate well. Slept enough to not be thoroughly exhausted when we got in, although that solid night of sleep was pretty epic. And here we are, in French Polynesia, waiting for it to stop raining, because it's definitely a little more rainy than we were expecting it to be. But I can't wait to share an anchorage with you somewhere out here. If you're out here, come say hi. We're on Calypso. We're on no foreign land. We'd love to raise a glass to toast to our incredible good fortune at being able to be out living this amazing lifestyle. Thank you for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love hearing from our listeners. We love it when you don't forget to subscribe. We love it when you tell your friends about us. And we love it if you let us know that we've helped you make boat life better, just one little bit at a time. Have the most spectacular week.